Hello, hello, hello. It's your new day with Donna Reiners and Dr. Cami Owen, where we solve all the world's problems, or maybe just one, and maybe it's yours. In our 30 minutes, we talk about your emotions and mind and how they tie into your body and spirit. We want you to renew and restore yourself in a world that wants you crazy. And sometimes we even talk about money. Introducing your hosts, Donna Reiners and Dr. Cami Owen. Hello, hello, hello. This is Donna and
Dr. Cami.
Yay! And today we are going to talk about a topic that is up and coming, I'd say. You know, self-love is a big topic right now.
We're not taught to speak kindly to ourselves. And I would say that for me personally, that was one of the biggest life-changing realizations I had. To actually speak to myself in the same way that I would speak to my best friend. And in my life, I would say that I've always been a very loyal and good friend to someone. I would do anything for someone that needed help. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't do that for myself. Mm-hmm. It was just such an aha moment.
What a paradox.
Yeah, I had such an aha moment because I was raised in a family. You just got it done. There was zero permission to cry in my house.
Wow.
It was literally said in my house, you were not allowed to cry.
Wow.
So there was little compassion for hurt feelings, physical hurt. You know, I learned just to get up and shake it off and you know, that type of thing. So I read a book by Kristen Neff called Self-Compassion. It was a life-changing book. It was so powerful. I bought it for my daughters, had them read it.
It's precious.
And it really was an amazing journey for me. But think of it this way, in the world of practically what can I do in the practical world. When you're speaking to yourself, and it could be out loud, but it's mostly a dialogue in your head, would I say this to my very best friend? You know, when we make a mistake, you know, a lot of times I've heard in my own.
Did you get?
Yeah. What a dumb thing. Are you kidding me? What were you thinking? That was
You know better.
Why did you do that? You know? And then the reality is, if my best friend made that same mistake, on no planet would I say that to them. On no planet would I.
That's because you've learned self-compassion.
No, that I would argue that is most of the time how women speak to themselves, and they would not say that to their best friend. They'll say it to themselves. They won't say it to their best friend. I think there is that dichotomy going on in a lot of people in the world. So, you know, if you had your best friend put on a dress and they say, how do I look? Oh, you look great. And if they didn't look great, you know, maybe let's try this dress instead. But it wouldn't be, oh, you're a fat cow, and who do you think you are wearing that and everything. But that could be what we say to ourselves. I've heard many of my friends say that out loud to themselves. You know,
I've heard those things out loud to other people.
Well, I would say
because because the person speaking doesn't have any compassion for themselves and has no self-love.
Yes.
And so has no way to filter it because it's coming out of who they are right that moment.
Yes. I think we're talking about two different people, because I have met that person too. I'm talking about the person that is actually genuinely loving to other people, but not to themselves. There are those people also that you're talking about. And I would say that in my world, I probably would have not that many people like that in my life. I get that there are people that take that on, but the person I'm talking about typically will say kind things to other people, but they are the least kind to themselves. And I would just say, can we just be your own best friend? If you're that kind of friend that you're going to lift the people around you up, say kind things to them, but you don't say those same kind things to yourself. I would say
lift yourself up.
Let's look at that. Let's bring that into your awareness. You may be unaware that you do that.
I think I'm probably in that category. I'm in the process of changing my words. I've changed a lot with regards to my internal. I grew up in a home that was very verbally abusive and physically abusive. Being physically abused to so much that I had outward circumstances that took place in my life that I also attracted that abuse because of basically I abused myself mentally and emotionally and physically. It showed up from me not wanting to bathe every day when I was a little kid. And, you know, my mom, she was tired and she died when we were young, but my mom wouldn't say anything or do anything about it. She said, well, if you want to be greasy, go ahead, be greasy. You'll come to yourself one day. And one day I did. One day I woke up and went, oh, I need to take a bath. Look at these zits on my face. I'm a little kid, you know, but I had this awareness that took place. I became self-aware that I was not treating myself with any kind of dignity or respect. I didn't call that when I was 10 years old. I just say, I know now. I was like, wow, Donna, you're not treating yourself very well. You need to clean yourself up.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes.
And so maybe we need to do that as an adult. Maybe it's time to clean yourself up.
Yes.
Brush your hair.
Yes.
Put on some makeup.
Yes. And be kind to yourself. And if you don't have everything it takes to do all of that right now, you could do one of those things.
Yeah.
And maybe that is mirror work is very, very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And if you could do this one thing for 1 minute, stand in the mirror, look at yourself in the eye, and I know you've talked about this, looking till you see the divine in you.
Stare in your eyeball.
Yeah. that I will tell you in workshops I've attended, being in the presence of another being that close can be very, very discomforting because we are at some point communicating divinity to divinity, and the humanness in us doesn't know what to do with all that.
Yeah.
It's the same when you're just looking in your own soul and looking at yourself in the mirror and looking in your eyes and saying, I love you. There are many people I've encouraged to do this that couldn't get 15 seconds into it.
Right.
And either burst into tears, couldn't do it anymore, said this is stupid, I'm not doing it, just resisted the whole thing. The more you resist it, the more love there is to agree to about yourself. And so I would say do as much as you can, look in the mirror and say I love you, and then do it again with more feeling, more energy, more, until you could actually say it in the same way you would say it to your best friend, your child, your husband, whoever it is that you have no trouble saying I love you to and actually feeling it. There's actually energy and emotion behind the words, not just saying the words. But I want you to have, I encourage you to have the same compassion and love and feeling in the words to yourself that you're saying to others.
When you look at your eyes, look into your eyes long enough and just really look into you, you're going to see your weaknesses. You're going to see your fears. You're going to see your dark shadows. You're going to see all your inadequacies. And those are all the things you don't want to see because maybe you judge yourself by them. Maybe that's why you refuse to have kindness towards yourself, because you have all these thoughts and ideas and feelings towards yourself, and maybe others have had those towards you as well, like me when growing up the way I did. If you would be willing to look in your eyes long enough to confront those things, and as Dr. Kami said, have compassion for yourself. If you look in someone else's eyes long enough and you see that dread, that darkness, that pain, the Bible says that the soul, the eyes are a window to the soul. if you would allow yourself with permission to look inside your own eyeballs and get past all the fears and just go, wow, there you are. And as she said, have compassion for yourself. Mm-hmm. Instead of harshly judging what you see, right? Because you could see all that and go, oh my goodness, I don't want to look at myself anymore. I don't like that. Instead, go, wow, there you are. The real me is right there. I see why you're sad. I see why you don't like yourself. Seeing those things, because when you really come into agreement with it, there's also a passage that talks about coming into agreement with your adversary. When you see it, you can dismiss it and get to the other side, which is your strength. Usually our strongest weakness is actually attached to our greatest strength. And the very thing we think is horrible about us, like my mouth by far is my strongest issue. But my mouth is also a tool that encourages people, strengthens people, lifts people up, lifts myself up, and as I train my mouth to speak strength versus weakness, I see my strength. Mm-hmm. I see, whoa, I might have made these mistakes, but now that same instrument that made these mistakes is producing this kind of fruit. Mm-hmm. And you can do that with you. You can produce fruit inside of you and love yourself more.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
Intention. Yes. So let's do that right now. Okay. We're here looking at you. So, yes, and it gets uncomfortable. I've had people at retreats. I have them look each other in the eye for a full 60 seconds and then a full more 60 seconds until literally people start weeping.
Yes. People
start hugging each other. People turn their eyes away from each other because they don't want to be that vulnerable. So I can't see you, but you'll be able to see how vulnerable you are. And then you can have compassion for your vulnerability.
One other thing I want to add to this is we have a tendency to say this is good and this is bad. This is positive. This is negative. This is all of us. So when you were shunning away things you think are bad or wrong or negative about you, when you have anger, it's there's something underneath it that's pushing up, that's a blessing you just haven't agreed to yet. So all of the negative things that we have are just a signal to us of a blessing that hasn't been agreed to yet. And you can't agree to it unless you acknowledge it, that it's there. So, I am angry, I'm like super angry. That is your authority returning. So as much anger as you have, that's how much authority is returning to you. You just haven't agreed to it yet. So love all of you, because all of you is from God. God doesn't make junk.
That's right.
So all of it is just a signal. It's a way that our subconscious communicates to us. So it's okay to have bumps in the road. It's okay to feel like, I made a mistake or actually make a mistake, because there's a lesson there that gets you closer to agreeing to the blessing that's right underneath it.
That is so good. I love that. And in my brain while you were talking, I saw myself, and because this was my life, I was always the last person chosen on a team. I was the last person invited to something. I wasn't invited to parties, all those different things.
Wow,
I really
had the same experience.
So all that negative, that at the time I was like, well, what about me? Why don't you love me? What's wrong with me? I can say today, and I'm telling you, we're not going to go into this right now, but even the death of my mom, and then the death of my best friend just 6 months later when I was young, 17, 18 years old, because of those life experiences, I choose the underdog. I choose a person that is the last one to be considered.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I take on a client that others would say no to because they'll get on their nerves, and they might still get on your nerves. You know, I do things now because those negatives, those weaknesses really were the strength that I would become in design, designed for me. And maybe you're in a place where you haven't done that yet. I know I always go back to the practical, but I bet if you really look at your life, I bet you'll find at least one thing that used to be what you would consider a weakness or something horrible about yourself that you could look at today and go, you know what? That is an area of real strong strength with me today. And then
Yes.
focus on the strength, focus on the good in that muddy water. See the muddy water clear now, clean, you
Yes.
know?
Yes, your greatest weakness shall be your greatest strength.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it is just a signal of where some energy and some attention you can choose to focus to bring that into the light, because it's just in the shadow is all. That's it. It's just in the shadow. Nothing's wrong. There's nothing wrong. And that's what we tend to do. We're human meaning-making machines. We make everything mean something. And the funny thing is, as we speak it, we're making it up. We're making up stories and then living like they're true. Something happens, and we make up a story about it. We have it all figured out. We make up a story about it, and we live like that's true. And until we make up a different story, and then we live like that's true. And the cool thing is, and what I want you to get is, we are making up the story. So we can make up any story we want. You can make up a great story.
A good story, a better story.
You can make up a great story, an empowering story, or are you making up a disempowering story? And if you're making up a disempowering story, you know, that could be cool. That's what you want to do. That's what you're choosing to do. Or you could say, look at that. I made up that disempowering story. How can I just flip that around to something that gives me strength and has me see myself for the awesome, amazing, divine, inspired being that I am.
Even if you were a victim, or you think you were a victim growing up, and the narrative was put towards you, which I had a lot of that. I had a lot of people that said a lot of negative, very negative things to me. It was very difficult for me to come out of agreement with that environment.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I could have grown up just saying, poor pitiful me, I'm a victim. I really could have. And I think that's why I have compassion for people also, because when they come to me, I can see that narrative very clearly. I'm like, wow. But I can also identify, oh, you were physically abused at this time and this time. And I can see how that generated inside your brain that something was your fault or whatever when it wasn't. And so you can come out of being a victim. And I know it probably sounds so cliche, be a victor.
Yeah.
But it's really not cliche. These are really strong words. Look up the word victim. The way you think about yourself, is it in the definition of victim? Because we can change that narrative.
Yes.
And take the bridge to victory.
Yes.
I know somebody who, I'm not going to say her name, but people who know me will go, oh, I know who that is. She was eating a salad like 45 years ago or 50 years ago, whatever, and there was a bug on it. Now, fresh salad, spinach, it can have those kind of things. Well, she decided right that moment, let's say 50 years ago, because she's quite older, that she hated spinach and she would never eat spinach again. Well, spinach has beautiful iron in it, you know, and of course she's lacking iron today, so it's kind of interesting how that works out. My point is, she will not touch spinach. She's like, no, I don't like spinach. I'm like, how do you know you don't like spinach? It's been 50 years since you've had spinach in your mouth. Maybe your taste buds have changed. Nope, I don't like spinach. And when I found out about the bug, I'm like, well, I can see why you didn't like it 50 years ago. But what if you made a change and you tried? So I've snuck it in. I've snuck it on things. I mean, I'm just being honest. She never says anything because it doesn't really have that strong an identifier on it when it's organic and clean, right? So she doesn't really know that she doesn't like it because she's convinced herself.
Yeah, it's a story she's living. How many stories are you living inside?
Yes, yes.
How many stories are you living that you actually made up? You know, I give the visual sometimes when I'm talking about this. If I'm sitting here and I just go. So what happened there? What just happened?
Well, you looked disgusted, and you definitely switched your own environment. So you either had something internally happen, you're like, oh my God, or something occurred and your body reacted to it. And you made a decision to react to whatever, whether it was external or internal, doesn't matter. But you definitely did something in agreement with whatever it was, or just the reaction of it. Am I close?
What
you did ask me.
Yes, I did. No, and this was perfect.
I mean, it's like
because Donna just made up a whole story about what just happened. I had some internal dialogue that just happened, and I had all this stuff going on.
I don't know.
All that happened is I turned to her, I made a face, and then I turned over here and did that. That's all that actually happened. That's what happened. Everything else was a story she made up.
Okay, well, let's talk about that because yes, I made up the story because I don't know, but you know why you did it. So the why is still important. Why has to do with intention. Why has to do with roots.
Yes, and that's none of your business. Like in the reality of world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What I did was the behavior. What I did was make a face and turn my. And if we had a bigger camera, I would just walk across the room and look at you and then walk by. And if I asked you, describe what just happened. Oh, she's mad at me for something. Something I did, she's mad at me.
Well, of course, I'm a root digger, so I'm always going to go for the roots. Now,
and it's a meaning. We are meaning-making machines. That's what we do as human beings. We make a meaning up. Now, I could as easily, made the meaning up that, wow, she's having a terrible day today. I wonder if I can go help her. Is there something I could do for her? Instead, some part of the population would say, oh, let me have some compassion. That looks like there's something going on.
It looked like you smelled something that was really off.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh.
And the point is, none of it's wrong. The point
it's perspective.
It's to show you this is what we do. Mm-hmm. This is what we do as human beings is make up a meaning. We can't help it. It's just like in our DNA, it's wired in. So if we can be cognizant and aware we're doing that, and we're making up a story, then make up a story that empowers you and empowers your environment.
I have an example. Let's say, if something came to mind, let's say someone stops talking to you. Mm-hmm. And you're pained about it. Mm-hmm. I can see where you want to create a scenario attached to it. Mm-hmm. Either A, you blame yourself and you go digging around to see what can you do to make yourself a victim. Or, I mean, there's lots of ors, but or what if they've gone through something devastating? They've retreated from everybody. But then yet their behavior still shows they're engaged in all these different things. You're just not a part of it. You have to choose, A, not to be offended, which we could do a whole thing on offense, because that is my cup of tea right there.
Yes.
That is like,
yes.
You can decide to be hurt about it, or you can take a deep breath. You can face whatever it is you think you could have participated with it, and then you can just move forward with or without them, because you're okay as you are, regardless of what you did or did not do. Because they are responsible for their own emotions. They're responsible for their own self-love. They're responsible for how they love or don't love you. They're responsible for their own actions. And you're not responsible for them. You're only responsible for you.
Yes.
I've had to do this myself. I mean, I've had to do this, I'd say 2 very specific times. That's not bad for 61 years, only 2. I've had to do that 2 very specific times where I had to get very self-reflective because I wanted to know what about my behavior? What is it I said? Was there a tone? Did I do something? Did I really do something wrong? If I did, I would want to know, right? Because I don't want to intentionally hurt anybody. So I really had to go through those things and come to the other side and conclude. And it may sound simple, but I had to conclude, it is what it is. And
yes,
they have the same power to press through and have unconditional forgiveness for me as I have for them. And so I'm just going to keep moving. And if there's value for me, awesome. But if there's not value for me any longer, then I have to be at peace with that. And I have to move forward and let God bring to me the people that will find value with me. And sometimes what's so fascinating to me, sometimes the very thing you want to let go of is keeping you from the very things, the very people, the very circumstances, the opportunities to not just grow, but to become all that you really are dreaming about, all that you really have in the back of your mind. We talk about negative things simmering in the back of the stove. There are good things simmering on the back of the stove inside of my mind.
Yes.
There are things that I wanted to accomplish for years and years and years. And all of a sudden, some of the things have opened up. It's like, how did that happen? Because I had to let go of some of the very people that no longer valued me.
Yeah.
I had to decide I was okay with not being valued by them and value myself anyway.
Yeah. You change the story about yourself, I would argue.
Or you are arguing.
I am arguing.
I would. You cannot say I would anymore. It has to say I am. I say this.
I am arguing. You changed your story.
I did. I changed, but then I also changed their story in my mind. Yes. I changed what I thought about the whole thing.
You changed who they were for you.
And I had compassion for, and I came on the side of having compassion for them instead of being hurt by it.
Because what you made up about them was your story. Doesn't mean it was true. It was just your story.
It's very true.
Well, we will see you again next week.
Yeah, we bless you. Thank you. See you next week.
Thank you for joining Your New Day with Donna Reiners and Dr. Cami Owen. We look forward to seeing you next time. Remember, we solve all the world's problems, or maybe just one, and maybe it's yours. Until soon.